Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Nothing Zilch Nada. I'm with my co-host Jacob Green, and I am Xavier Dean. And this week, Jacob has a topic for us. Isn't that
I
right?
do.
All right.
So I'm gonna tell a small story a little bit of how I came across this topic as I was thinking about it this past week because we had that 6 month long hibernation or sabbatical, whatever you want to call it, from this podcast. And each passing week I'd be like, oh man, I think we should talk about this or we should talk about that because there was a lot that happened over the past 6 months, around the world and such. Um, and I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about this week. I was thinking I should do another history topic, or maybe I should we should talk about our work stories. I even thought about, talking about some of the stuff that we do for a living, you know, like running or how I got into Taekwondo. For the record, I still want to go over those things, but there is a particular topic that just came up to my mind yesterday that I absolutely wanted to talk about. And I wanted to pose the question of news media travel, specifically when it comes to social media. And the question that I keep thinking about, and for the record, I've been thinking about it for the past few weeks. It just came up to my mind yesterday. And the question is news traveling too fast? Like, is the way that we receive information becoming too rapid now? And before I have you answer that question, Xavier, I would like to lead more into it, uh, of how I came across uh, this particular question. So, a few weeks ago, actually about a month ago, during May, as this is how I came across this, new Pope just got elected, Pope Leo the 14th. Uh, and as soon as people heard about who the new Pope was, there was just all sorts of information going about social media about some of the stuff that he's saying, some speculation going about. And I mean, there was speculation beforehand of oh, who's the new Pope going to be? And what's he going to do? Um, but then Leo the 14th gets elected, and then people are going to be like, oh, well, he said he's going to do this and he's going to do this. And it was all very immediate. And one particular post that came to my attention is I don't know if this was used as a joke or not, or to purposely put out false information, but there was this AI photo that looked very, very suspiciously real of uh Pope Leo the 14th playing the trombone because as you know, Leo the 14th was born in Chicago, Illinois. He didn't necessarily grew up in in Chicago necessarily. I think he was there at some point for missionary work, but besides the point. Um, but they were saying it was a very convincing story about oh, he used to play jazz trombone in Stan Kenton's band. And uh, yeah, he was a trombone player. He used to be called like Bobby something. I can't remember the last name they were given, or that Leo was given. I can't remember his last name, but they're saying that he played jazz trombone, played in Stan Kenton's band, which was one of the many big bands back in the day, and that he was a really great trombone player. And while he doesn't play the trombone much anymore, uh, that he still has his trombone in his room next to him for whenever he wants to play it again. It was a very convincing story. And as soon as whoever sent it out posted it, it immediately got uh, fact checked, and uh, people were already claiming that like this is not true. And I even researched it, and yeah, it's not true. Not even the Wikipedia article like mentions that he ever has played jazz trombone. Again, I don't know if it was a joke. I don't know if this was to purposely give false information just by the fact that like, he lived in Chicago, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that it came about so quick along with other things that it made me wonder about like the speed at which social uh the speed at which we get the news now due to electronic media and more specifically social media. Um, and I was researching articles today, specifically about like the history of journalism in general, because journalism has been a thing since the beginning of time. I mean, the first thing that would come about is like, messengers is how we would get the news. You send one person to go to another person's house, maybe even a town, maybe even across to another country. That has been a thing for a long time. But one of the articles I researched from Britannica lists the earliest known journalistic product was a news sheet circulated in ancient Rome, and it was called the Acta Diurna, or Diurna. I don't think I'm pronouncing it right, but it is said to date from before 59 BCE, and it recorded important daily events such as public speeches. Um, but but throughout the years, there were other types of journalism that would come about. Like in China during the Tang Dynasty, there was uh, a court circular called the Bio or report, and it was issued to government officials. Um, the first newspapers would appear in German cities about 1609. And then the first English newspaper, the Weekly News, was published in 1622. And then one of the first daily newspapers would be the Daily Coran, which appeared in 1702. I'm not going to go through all of them. But magazines started in the 17th century. And then journalism would officially become a profession. Uh, it was having a growing sense of professionalism in the 20th century. And that was due to many important factors, which includes increasing organization of working journalists, specialized education for journalism, a growing literature dealing with the history, problems, and techniques of mass communication, and an increasing sense of social responsibility on the part of journalists. So journalists were becoming more and more a profession, and especially before the latter half of the 19th century, where universities would start offering journalism as a part of education. And that included the first university to do that would be the University of Missouri in Columbia in 1879 to 84. Um, yeah, eventually we would get stuff like newspapers, and then later on during the 20th century, we would eventually get radios and television. And the more these electronic sources of media would come about, the faster we would get news travel. And this would eventually lead into stuff like cable news and the internet. And I mentioned all that to say that like the more the more journalism has progressed, the more our news media travel becomes faster. And in a lot of ways, it's a good thing. Like, in case there's like a big emergency that happens, or there's some type of an attack that happens, or like for example, last year when the south of the United States was having all those wildfires, we got that information almost immediately. Um, and that is a good way that fast media travel has helped. However, however, I also think that fast media travel has become not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a very mishandled thing.
Hmm.
And though the example that I brought up earlier of Pope Leo the 14th, uh, getting elected as Pope and people making speculations and claims right away hasn't it's only has shown the issue of like fast media travel. And for the record, even though this is a much later event, this isn't the only instance because it's been happening for quite a few years now, and it's only gotten worse as time has went on. And again, I'm not saying that fast media travel is entirely a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. But I also think that some things could be handled better.
Mhm.
So before I could continue on with that, do you have any thoughts on it, Xavier?
So I'm thinking, like as you're mentioning, with how fast news travels now, it's a great way to keep up with like world events. Like, us in the middle of the United States, we can learn about these big events that happen in, like Europe or Asia. I feel maybe it's not necessarily the speed of how we get things, but more think of it like this. Most news outlets are in a rush to try to get the biggest story out first. So
Mhm.
the way I'm thinking about this is maybe instead of how fast it's going out, maybe it's that, they'll get part of the story, but not the full story. So when they're trying to get something out, they're trying to like fill in like certain gaps that may or may not be true.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, yeah, you actually led into my point that I was getting at because yes, I've been talking about the media speed, but that's only been like a small factor as to why uh we get some of the news that we do. It's only a small factor. But what you just said right there, that's like the big issue that I feel like with a lot of not even just news media, but just anybody with access to the internet in general. Um, because if you think about it, um, anybody anybody could make a post about some type of an event that just happened. It doesn't matter what the event is. It doesn't matter what your standing is on it. You could post about it. You could just take a picture of it. You don't even need to take a picture of it. You could just send in a black screen with just text on it and just post it on your story or post it on your Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat or whatever. Um, like people can just do that in an instance now. Like as long as you have access to a computer or a phone, which a lot of people do,
Mhm.
um, you're able to send information like that.
Mhm.
The problem that you run into though is that this kind of dwells into another concern that I have when it comes to the fast media travel is that like because of how we're able to do it at an instance now and not just be like I have to bike ride to the next place to give them the news. um People, a lot of people nowadays, I feel like a lot of people nowadays don't really take the time to think about what they want to share in terms of their opinions on it on an event. In other words, this is kind of a phrase I'm using. Nothing gets stirred in the pot now, and by stirring the pot, I mean like when usually when people share information about certain events, it's usually anything political or religious or just some type of debatable topic uh, with very complex information. Uh, People don't take the time to think about that stuff anymore. Not many people do. Um, they just hear the information and then they write about it in their story and then post it on the internet and don't give it thought.
Mhm.
And
Well, again, this is going back to people want to be the first to get it out, or they want to put something out to get the most views, the most
or
clicks.
they want to contribute to the other people that
Or
are also doing it. It's kind of like you don't follow your own path, you follow the crowd sort of deal.
hmm exactly.
You're following what everyone else is doing because well everyone else is doing it, so if I do it then I contribute to something.
Right, the quote unquote wisdom of the crowd. But then I'm gonna go and quote something I'm sure every mother, at least in our generation, has quoted to us.
Mhm.
If Jimmy jumps off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? Jake, would you? If Jimmy
Um,
if Jimmy
depends
over there was the coolest kid in school and he were to jump off the bridge, would you jump off the bridge?
uh
You're taking
depends on
too long to think about this. You're taking way too long to think about this.
what I was gonna say. It depends on the scenario. So let's say if people were chasing after us, like if there was like a mob chasing after us, or or whatnot. Um, yeah, I would probably jump off a bridge, but if it's
Okay, then
for
let's add detail to it. Let's just say you are with Jimmy, you're just hanging
Mhm,
out, and then all of a sudden he gets the urge to jump off the bridge. Would you
mhm.
also jump off that bridge?
No.
There. That's sort of what I'm trying to get at.
Mhm,
As you were mentioning, people want to try to do the same things as others because that's what everyone's doing. I'm
mhm.
not going to go out there and say that I'm not, I don't do that because
And I'm not saying
I
I
bet.
don't do that either. I've been guilty of it in the past, but um even when I'm sharing information to people now, it's like I think about it for a bit before I decide to send it out because I'm someone that likes to I'm more of a thinker more than a call to the action sort of. Like
Hmm.
now, if there was a scenario where like if someone was in danger, then I wouldn't have to think about it.
Right.
But if it's something that's not that immediate, if it's uh again, if someone was at a debate and they're sharing information, or if there's this rumor that's going about,
Hmm.
I would have to think about it. Not even for hours, probably days, maybe weeks, maybe even a month, maybe years. Um, some
You're
of the greatest
still
thinkers that
thinking
we've
about the
had,
great taco dilemma of 2016. At 2016.
or you're reminding me about the I was about to
Bless you.
I was about to see sir for a second. Or the Chipotle scandals that happened like a few years ago with like their health code violations and whatnot.
Mm.
Um, but again, fact of the matter is that what I'm trying to get at is because media travels so fast, like the amount of accessible media that we have travels so fast
Hmm.
that we have the urge to say something right away. And as you said, someone wants to be the first to jump on that train. They want to be the first to spread that information.
I want to be the first to jump off that bridge. After after
But at the end of the day, other people are going to share it, and it's not usually the case that the first person that puts out that information is the one that gets the most views or whatnot.
No.
Like, if you were to talk about, say, someone's like social media page, someone that's like well known to like a certain demographic and they share some big event that happens, they might get some views. But if other news outlets, bigger news outlets, let's say Fox News or CCBS or uh, CNN, if they cover like that same event, it's probably going to get more news because uh, a lot of people go to those bigger news outlets. It's the same thing with articles. Like if someone were to make a blog post about a certain event, which I will say, if you get your information from a blog, you're immediately going to get canned down,
But
especially
the
in a
only
debate.
information I get is from the Onion. Best news source out there. Everything they say is 100% true.
Yeah, but if you get news from a blog post, you're gonna get discredited right away, especially for a debate. Um, but like again, same instance of like someone posts about it in a blog, other bigger article publishers are gonna get more attention, like the the Washington Post and the New York Times.
Mhm.
Um, but that's not to say that those companies won't spread false information. In fact, I think the bigger companies are more likely to spread more false information
All right. Well,
than
like we were mentioning earlier, it's they want to get their, the big headlines out first. As well, part of this is also they want to try to grab more people. Like, I'm gonna let's say Jake, you saved a cat from a tree. Say one day you
Mhm,
saved a cat from a tree, and you get these two news stations. The first one just says local boy saves a cat from a tree. All right. And the second one says, big time jazz musician skips out on show, saves cat from tree. Which one are people gonna be more likely wanting to read?
say that again one more time.
Okay. Local boy saves cat from tree, or big time musician skips out on show to save cat from tree.
Probably
Hmm.
the second one.
Yeah, because they make you perceived as bigger. They make it sound like you went out of your way, going so far as to skipping a show that you might not have even had to begin with just to save a cat from a tree.
Mhm,
So they're like, in that situation, sure, I would consider you a fairly big jazz musician. But let's say you didn't have a show that day, and then you go to save the cat from a tree just because you were out for a walk. They're using extra details, whether or not they're true, to draw people in. Because if they stick to just the normal details, it's like, oh, well, it's just some guy who saved a cat from a tree. But now it's like, oh my God, there's this big jazz musician. I wonder who this musician was. Maybe I know him personally. Or, oh, they skipped a show. Oh, well, who was it so that I know next time if I were to want to go to the shows, he might end up skipping out to save a dog, or maybe I want to support him more by going to his shows. Stuff like that.
mhm,
So, these different news outlets will add extra details, regardless of if they're true or not, as a way to spark interest. That's kind of what tabloids do as well. They'll
mhm.
make up things to catch people's eyes. Like Ben Affleck's great scandal, how the old Batman star, you know, had a shocking secret with Henry Cavill or stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're going to
Um,
use those things to draw people in without taking into account, is it true?
mhm. And think about this. The greatest thinkers that we've had throughout history wouldn't they were the people that wouldn't necessarily follow a crowd.
No.
Like if you were to take like Plato and Socrates as earlier examples, um, they would have like debates with each other, and they were very intellectual. They were very formal. And it wasn't just like two people yelling at each other. But it wasn't coming from like false information, and it wasn't necessarily, well, some of it is based on their opinions, but like that's also because they've spent years thinking about it, observing it. um, and tested it out for themselves that like they want to spread that information to other people. But that's only because they spent the time to think about it. And that has been the case throughout history with other thinkers, whether it's like people from the realm of math and science, from the realm of music and art, um, politics and religion. We've had all sorts of great thinkers, and I would say that there are still great thinkers even now. Um,
Hmm.
but at the same time, there are still a lot of people that follow a crowd
Hmm.
and feeling like that they have to be a part of this like big thing that's going on and not taking the time to think about it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of sharing information too, people don't take the time to think about some of that stuff anymore, about like how they feel about it or how it affects other people.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
We're very selfish.
so
We think
yeah.
about ourselves and not others.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, you shouldn't have to be the Englishman man going down the hill who came down with all the bananas and leaving the people with no bananas.
But I want the bananas.
Too bad the Englishman took them.
That's
By
it.
the way,
Gonna,
do you know where that's from?
I should. It's familiar, or it sounds familiar.
It's a short skit from VeggieTales.
Never mind, then. I did not know about that.
I'll have to show
The
it to you
first thing that came to
sometime.
mind was like Donkey Kong. I think there was this YouTube channel
Oh,
called Berkeley. They were making a skit. I think it was going through the villain side, and it was like King K. Rool and someone else.
oh,
They went to where Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong live and saw all the bananas, and they're like, "Let's take this back to the city." Moral of the story, Donkey Kong's the one stealing all our bananas.
mhm.
He is going to be the gorilla that the 100 men will fight.
Yeah. Um, but my main sticking point to all of this is that like just because we have more accessible forms of media and how we can spread fast media ourselves, that still doesn't mean you should say something right away. Again, if it's an actual emergency, like if we have like another big event that happens like 9/11, you know, yes. But if it's in a debate, even when it comes to more complex topics, or it's something that isn't 100% credible yet,
Hmm.
please do not post it. Like, I mean, no one is stopping you. This is one of the big drawbacks because, like, especially in our country, where like we're pretty free to do whatever we want.
All right.
And that's even taken into consideration other countries because like you know because other countries they have social media like Europe, but when people post about like their opinions, whether right or wrong, they have the potential of the police coming to their house, maybe even getting arrested for it, which
Yeah.
is something that does not really happen in the US, at least not that often. Um, but but again, we really have to think about what does it mean to have freedom and what how can I use the freedom that I have now to my benefit as well as other people?
Hmm.
And again, all it takes is like some thought, you know, think about it for a while. And a while could mean anything. Again, could be.
Okay, Jake?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Why?
Because on my end, you kind of froze for a second.
Uh,
Oh, I'm now getting my internet is unstable.
mm,
All right.
yeah.
No, like
So
kind of, it was one of those weird things. You've like froze, and it was like for a hot minute.
were you able to were you able to get all that I said?
I have absolutely no clue. You might have to say it again.
So
Ah, dang it, happened again.
we
Oh, you were waiting. Never mind. Never mind.
um with the with how much freedom that we have, we really have to think about how can we use it to our benefit and for other people's benefit as well. And in regards to like how fast media travels, you know, you don't have to post about it right away.
Mm-hmm.
Take your time to think about it. In fact, the stuff that should be covered is stuff that has been thought about for quite a while or has been tested at the very least.
Yep. In theory.
In theory.
In theory. All right. But with that, that seems to be all the time we have for this week. Next week, I will come back with a brand new topic. And I know we normally have this or these things unscripted, but next week may involve a little bit of a script. Teeny it's bit of script.
Mhm.
I won't say what it is, but you know, we'll know. We will know. But
Mhm.
besides that, I'm Mr. Xavier Dean,
And I'm Jacob Green.
and we will wish you all a wonderful day. Keep on going with those conversations, and just remember, think before you post. Is that what we want to say?
Yeah,
All
I think
right.
that sums it up.
All right. Think before you post. Well, have a wonderful day and enjoy, and we will see you next week for another episode.